Hey guys, what's up? Aru. The 11 Harbingers, one of the protagonistic but also somehow friendly groups of Genshin Impact. From Pierro's mysterious involvements as the 0th Harbinger and the de facto leader of the Fatui, to Capitano's unforeseen sacrifice and even more unforeseeable futures with Renova and the ley lines, and finally Dottore's multitude of mad experiments and unethical practices throughout the game's story. This is every Harbinger explained, and in this video we'll be focusing on Pierro, Capitano, and Dottore respectively. This will include a short sprinkling of theories for each Harbinger, but I won't go into too much detail as this is a general highlight of each Harbinger, so think of it as an extension of the Everything We Know About Snezhnaya video, links down below, but more focused on every official detail I could find for all the Fatui Harbingers. Now if you're curious about the other Harbingers like Arlecchino and Colombina's relation to Renova, or Pantalone and Pulcinella's possible takeover with Project Studia, don't worry cause I'll go over them eventually since this will also be a short miniseries up until the best one of them all, Tartaglia and his relations to the Abyss and Skirt. So, without further ado, let's get started. Pierro, known as the Jester and the theorized 0th Harbinger in the Fatui, is one of the most interesting and mysterious figures in Genshin Impact. A pure-blooded Conrian and a survivor of the Cataclysm, Pierro was once a royal mage who failed to prevent the Sages, or 5 sinners of Conria, from tearing the Veil of Sin, which is an act that brought the wrath of Celestia upon his homeland and was given the Curse of Immortality. Disillusioned by Celestia and its laws on Tevat, Pierro joined the Tsaritsa and founded the Fatui, becoming its de facto leader. His overarching influence seems to run deep within the organization, from recruiting the first few Harbingers like Scaramouche and Arlecchino, to masterminding the events like the Tatarasuna Mystery through Dottore and Inazuma's Vision Hunt Decree through Signora. His current official lore is that he personally recruits those with potential, grants delusions, and although Pulcinella and Pantalone control the politics and economic relations of the Harbingers, Pierro still oversees the Fatui's vast military and political movements and machinations. Finally, he manages the direction of the Fatui as the head and likely has some control over the other Harbingers outside of the Tsaritsa's commands. Now, Pierro is known to be loyal to the Tsaritsa, but his ultimate goals remain unclear as his bitterness towards the gods and his connection to Conria suggest a deeper and personal agenda. Quite similar to the recent captain's hatred for Renova, but likely a darker and deeper hatred for all of Celestia as a whole. Although we hear from the Harbingers about the commands, news, and interactions of the Tsaritsa, it's weird that Pierro is the one who moves for the Tsaritsa's demands, even when it's about the other Harbingers. From Tartaglia's delusion to Arlecchino's pardon for murdering Crusabina, it's as if the Tsaritsa isn't speaking personally and only gives her decree through Pierro, with the only exception being Capitano, where rumors say that the Tsaritsa seems to have allowed him to keep his position. This undying old man's knowledge of the Abyss, the Traveler's siblings, and Tevat's false sky positions him as a key figure in the game's overarching narrative. A very knowledgeable leader and a dangerous individual to face off against, both in power level and in wisdom. As the air quotes jester, his name reflects a sad clown or buffoon from the Commedia dell'arte, a character doomed to heartbreak, symbolic of his tragic fall from loyal mage to calculating and enigmatic 0th Harbinger leader today. But with that said, we can only hope that the Tsaritsa isn't locked away in a tall tower of the Zapoliarny Palace or is sitting on a golden throne, speaking through Pierro. The number 1 Harbinger, Capitano's story is actually one of the few Conrians we know that aren't completely related to the 5 sinners or the political landscape of Conria. Capitano served as a commander during its final days, witnessing the fall of his nation not only to the Abyss, but also from the wrath of Celestia's rules. Like all pure-blooded Conrians, Capitano was cursed with immortality and his journey eventually brought him to the Tsaritsa, where he became the first Fatui Harbinger, serving directly under the Fatui. Despite his immense power, Capitano is respected not just for his strength but for his unwavering sense of justice and righteousness, with Arlecchino and Tartaglia openly acknowledging their respect for his character and skill, along with fighting Mawika, who showcased her fury in Conria 500 years ago, and facing her head-on is something that only Capitano could do. Sadly, they never really met each other during that time and could only face off with a fraction of their true power left. Something worth mentioning during his time in Natlan is his knowledge about the region's history, its scholars, and its technology. Something that even Mawika didn't really know yet, as well as the names of the 3 scholars being connected to Simulanka. This knowledge is given to them by the tribe chief Aizu from the Nightwind tribe. From what we can assume, he also seems to have made an outpost in Natlan, kidnapping Saurians and taking their phlogiston to create what we can only assume as a Fatui version of phlogiston equipment. Phlogiston-powered equipment is actually possible without extracting it from Saurians, but with such technology it would take decades or even millennia to harness and by extension master. But there is another possible Harbinger who could have done this same experiment regarding phlogiston-powered equipment, which we'll talk about in the next segment. Now, after Capitano sacrificed himself to the ruler of death, Renova, his sacrifice was commemorated by the people of Natlan and his subordinates, which you can find, well, in Natlan. Moika mentions that this was the end that he sought for all along, but because of reasons unknown, he is rumored to have kept his position as the #1 Harbinger despite becoming one with the ley lines. Whether or not his duty isn't done or that it's a form of respect that the Tsaritsa has for him is still unknown. But then again, we rarely hear about the Tsaritsa, and for some reason Pierro is always there. Maybe at some point after defeating a shade of the Primordial one, Capitano can come back playable and be used as a catalyst for the Tsaritsa's grand plan. Dottore, also known as Il Dottore or the Doctor, is the second Harbinger of the Fatui. His alias, like the other Harbingers, is derived from the Commedia dell'arte, where Il Dottore is a rich, bombastic character who loves the sound of his own voice and meddles in other people's affairs, traits that align with Dottore's eccentric and self-preserving personality within the game. In the Commedia dell'arte, Dottore is often paired with Pantalone, another scheming figure which is reflected in their collaboration within the Fatui. His presumed real name, Zandik, is a term from Zoroastrianism meaning heretic, symbolizing his rejection of orthodoxy and pursuit of forbidden knowledge. This goes even deeper when you realize that his experiments are all about creating or reaching the level of gods through any means necessary. His blue Renova-like wings, similar to Arlecchino's, paired with the striking blue color similar to celestial nails, are just one aspect of his terrifying implications of creating or even becoming a god. Zandik was a researcher with an obsession for creating enhanced humans capable of rivaling the gods. This obsession, coupled with his bizarre and often unethical methods, led to his ostracism and then expulsion from the Sumeru Academia. His research ranges from dissecting Eleazar victims to experimenting on dreams, ley lines, and forbidden knowledge, as well as whatever Cthulhu monster that he has in the manga. His collaborations often end with the demise of his partners for being too suspicious or arrogant to his true plans. And his obsession with ancient technologies such as the machines of Gurabad and Ardravi Valley only deepened his disdain for Sumeru's constricting ways, as well as further explaining the origins of his usage of various primordial powers that you might not have noticed until now. After a firm debate with Pierro, who he just met outside the deserts, he joined the Fatui as the second Harbinger, which virtually skyrockets his ancient experiments to levels unfathomable and borderline should have awakened the heavenly principles. In Mondstadt, we were able to track down one of his automaton manufacturing facilities, which was then later destroyed by Child. In Sumeru, he subjected individuals with Eleazar like Kale through Barnabas using God Remains, and Abbas with painful testing procedures which he made an assumption to weaponize with further testing, as well as manipulating the sages of Sumeru to create a new god and kidnapping children to lure Aranara in the hopes of weaponizing dreams. Finally being able to modify the Akasha system to control people's minds, and even finding a way to subdue the Traveler with a weird audio gadget similar to the one we encounter in Natlan. Moving on to Inazuma, he posed as Escher to sabotage the Mikage furnace, killing Niwa Hisahide and deceiving Scaramouche, which he was then found out at the end of the Sumeru chapter. Not only that, he's also known for creating segments of himself at various ages to enhance his cognition and lifespan, a feat that he also considers his greatest achievement. These segments operate independently but are prone to infighting, a weakness that the Lesser Lord Kusanali later exploits and bargains to be removed for giving the Gnosis. Whether or not he was able to make new ones is still unknown, but it's possible that he may have already made a refined version of his own segments. In Fontaine, he used to work with the previous knave, Crusabina, taking the reject orphans of the House of Hearth and using them likely as test subjects and experimental guinea pigs. However, this agreement was shelved after Arlecchino took Crusabina's place. Moving on to Natlan, there's an outpost that has been kidnapping Saurians and taking their phlogiston. The reasons for this are unknown, but it might be related to the recent arrival of phlogiston-powered gear, as well as the recent spying of the Fatui in Natlan during the war, catching a glimpse of the Ancient Moon's remnants, which was a group led by Dottore. Now, as for this camp, we currently don't know which Harbinger leads it exactly, but the likely two culprits are Dottore and Capitano, of which the former is more likely after we've seen the extent of Capitano's sense of justice and righteousness. This lines up perfectly with Dottore's habits, the phlogiston gear said to be from Fontaine, maybe from Escher, and the Fatui spies infiltrating Natlan, as well as the recent stronghold of Dottore in Nodkrai, which also lines up perfectly with the interests of Dottore in ancient and even forbidden technologies, of which phlogiston, Nodkrai's primordial powers, and the Ancient Moon's remnants all are. Something you might have noticed is that Dottore can be, sort of, heard from doing projects in multiple regions within the VAT. Granted, we don't exactly see him physically, his presence still gets found out one way or another within each region. Now, if we were going to make a guess, his segments likely have been busy with these multitudes of experiments since the beginning. And even if he deleted his segments, there's always a chance that he could just make better ones in the future. Something I've noticed too is the piercing ringing sound that he uses on the Traveler, sounding quite similar to the one we heard in the secret source domain. Capitano calls this the sound of lament, while the Lord of the Night says that it was her cries when she woke up, storing any fragmented soul within the vicinity. This is also likely a power that Dottore might have been able to harness and fine-tune so he can use on the Traveler in Sumeru. It's also likely that Dottore will come to Natlan to take the final Gnosis, but whether or not he would return to Snezhnaya is still a mystery, since he currently has the Electro and the Dendro Gnosis. Knowing how he predicts things with scientific logic, just like he did with Scaramouche, he might have something else planned before returning the Gnosis to the Tsaritsa. Just as an extra segment for his backstory, Dottore's first appearance is actually in the Genshin manga, which is both goofy and terrifying at the same time. Operating from the Heresies, which is a Fatui underground arena, probably located in Mondstadt, Dottore oversaw the experiments, turning people into monstrous fighters, along with a cleanup crew of Lovecraftian design. His disdain for failures became very evident when he turned down his own subordinate, Krupp, into an automaton. In Mondstadt, he and Krupp attended the Ludi Harpastum at Diluc's Manor, where Dottore's apathy and arrogance shone through. This was then followed by an interesting battle against Diluc, where he used one of his floating needles that shined bright blue, which, if you noticed, is the same color as the ones in his in-game design, as well as the same hue as the celestial nails, both gold and blue. Needles and nails might just be the same thing here. That and Dottore insulting visions and vision holders, calling them self-inflated tools, and having great interest in the delusion that Creepus once had. And there we go, the first chapter of this channel's Harbinger mini-series. I'll be making the next one within the next week, featuring another set of Harbingers that follow a similar set of numbering depending on how they're related, all the way down to my favorite Harbinger, Tartaglia, on the final video. Now, if you've watched this video to the end and would like to see more, please leave a like, comment below your thoughts, or correct me in any possible info that I might have missed. As always, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more of my ramblings, and stay mad theorists. Bye!